command syntax. We'll stop with talking about command syntax. If you are going to use the operating system from the command prompts, you have to understand command syntax. And command syntax is simply, you know, the rules that you need to follow when you're executing a command. The punctuation. When I type a command, if I'm able to provide additional information with that command, how does it have to be written? What information is required? What information is not required? That all falls under the command syntax. If you're going to be writing a command at the command prompt, you obviously need to understand how to write it, and if you don't know how to write it, then how to look for information that will help you understand how to write it. So command syntax obviously is therefore going to allow you to communicate with the computer from the command line. And the first thing I want to do is, the first thing I'm going to do in this section is concentrate on how to read syntax. Okay, so I might bring up commands on the screen that we're not even going to touch on until a later chapter. But I want to look at how do I look at the command, the syntax of a command, and be able to determine which portions are required, which ones are optional. Okay, and if they're optional or required, you know, what types of values can I provide in those areas. So any command that you want to display its syntax, you simply have to type the command followed by the /?, or, so if I type, the first one I'm going to look at is vol, which we don't cover until a later chapter, but for example's sake, for looking at how to read the syntax, if I do vol /?, or if I type help, vol, so the word help followed by the command, or the command followed by /?. Okay, both generate the same output. The /? is an older, it's been around since DOS 2 or DOS 1. The help command was newer. Ironically though, there are some commands like who am I /? Okay, pretty lengthy syntax there. But if I type help, who am I, it comes back and it says the command is not supported by the help utility. Okay, so point being is a /? always works. Okay, the help followed by the command doesn't always work. I always use the /? But obviously, you know, you do what's, you know, what you want. But so help vol /? or help vol would generate the same output. I started with a very simple command. You saw how the who am I scrolled right by. I'm not going to ask you to read the syntax of that particular one, but look at this command, and I can see a description, displays the disk volume, label, and serial number if they exist. And then I have the command itself, followed by, in this case, something in brackets. Anything in the syntax of a command that is displayed with brackets is optional, okay, which means that for this particular command, there are no required. I can type VOL by itself, and I'm going to get output. It's going to give me information, in this case about drive G, that it's a new volume, that's the name of it, and the serial number is whatever number is displayed there, okay? So if I provide a drive letter, if I type vol C:, okay, it's going to give me information about that particular volume, okay? But the point is that I don't have to. It's in brackets. It's an optional parameter. If it's not in brackets, then it's not optional. So if I use copy, and again, the copy command we'll look at in more depth in another chapter, but just looking at reading the syntax of this command. A lot more information here, but again, just look at the syntax of this line, okay? Brackets, 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 no brackets, source, okay? Think of what do you think copy does without even covering it? What do you think it probably allows you to do? Well, not a disk, but files on the disk, okay? So I might want to copy a file or a folder from the command prompt. If you think about that, it kind of makes sense that the source would be required. How the heck would the command know what you're copying if you don't tell it what you want to copy? Okay, so the source is required. Everything else is optional. Okay, everything else is in brackets. So again, looking at the syntax, the general description, copies one or more files to another location. The syntax, which portions of which parameters are required, which ones are not required. In this particular example, the only one that's required is source. The rest are all optional. We're not even looking at what each one does. We'll look at that as we go, but for now, just looking at reading the syntax of a command. okay?
So you would put copy, then you'd put source, and then you put the bracket of the letter?
No, you would put copy followed by whatever it was you wanted to copy. So if I had a file called eric.txt and I wanted to copy that file, I could say copy eric.txt, and then I have to specify, you know, we'll talk about the rest of the command later. But for now, what I'm asking you to do is to look at the command and say, what's required, what's not required, okay? If I did type /?, okay, what's required, what's not? The opposite, okay, the opposite. The brackets are identify things that are not required, are optional, okay? Anything that is not in brackets is required, okay? So in this particular case, I couldn't type the word type by itself without any additional information because the syntax tells me I have at least one required parameter here and I haven't provided that, so that that tells me, and in this case it actually gives me an error message. It says that the syntax is incorrect. Not a very clear error message, it just tells me the syntax is incorrect, but at least now I know that if I type the command followed by a /, it could help me determine you know, where I'm going wrong with that particular command. Okay? Questions? Other commands. If I take a look at, let me see which command. dir, okay? dir /? A lot of stuff on this one. Okay, well, this chapter we'll take a look at all these parameters, but for now, again, notice drive : path, everything that you see on this list is in brackets. Okay, and is that consistent with what we've done so far with the dir command? Can I type dir all by itself? Right, I can type dir all by itself, except I've got my fingers on the wrong keys here. I can type dir all by itself, okay, and it works. So I know then that when I type dir /? You can see that I can provide a drive letter. I can provide other information. We've already done the /a, did we not? When I looked at the root of the drive to see all files, okay, it's optional, but if I use it, okay, it has a certain purpose. In this case here, remember when we went to the root of, I get I'm not seeing my prompt at the bottom there. My box is too full. If I go to the root of the C drive and I do dir /a, it tells me that I have 18 files and 30 directories. If I do a dir without the /a, it tells me that I have 14 files and 24 directories. What does that tell me? There are some hidden files and folders at the root of the drive, okay? But this in the /a parameter helped me display that information, okay? So if I use the /a, well, let's look at the /o. The /o for sort, okay? If I use it, I can use any one of these letters to identify how I want to sort it, okay? And we are going to look at all these parameters a little bit later in this chapter, but right now I'm looking at reading the syntax, okay? If you look at the syntax of a command, what's required, what's not, and then there are those that are, I don't know if there's any in the, let's look at date /? The pipe between, so I got one set of brackets, but I have a pipe here, okay? What does the pipe mean? The pipe means either or, okay? I can't use both. I can use a /t, and we saw that last week, or I think it was last week. Date /t shows me the current date, okay? Date followed by a date, if I wanted to actually change this date to 2011, and I can't change the date. The network has, here at BCC, nobody can change the date no matter what rights you have on the network. But if I could type date followed by the new date and press the enter key, and that would be a valid way to execute this command. So the pipe says one or the other. I can't use both at the same time. Another example with the pipe, and again a command we'll look at later in the semester, is a trip. Okay, this one you'll see has +r or -r. You can't. This is, you're turning a read-only attribute on or off. You can't turn it on and off at the same time. So the R or the minus R, but not both at the same time. The plus A or the minus A, but not both at the same time. The plus S and the minus S. So that pipe between options within brackets means that you can use one or the other, but you can't use both. Okay?
Just have a quick question.
Yep.
Whatever command you type in and then you do the slash with a question mark and it lists all of the different options, are those all of the options, or will there be some there that, you know, are there some that exist that aren't on the list?
That's a really good question, because I'm trying to think of the command that I ran into recently from chapter 3, I think, when I was looking ahead at chapter 3. Because chapter 3, there's a lot of differences between XP and Windows 7. And one of the commands, format command as a matter of fact, has a parameter that it supports,
Okay.
but it's not displayed in the help. Okay? It's a new parameter. And in some cases what I find is that Microsoft hasn't updated the help, the slash question help screens.
Okay.
So you might find a parameter that's old that doesn't even work anymore, or is not, there's no reason to use it.
Okay.
Whereas, and I think DIR, this might be, this is a good example. Okay, the /4, display 4-digit years. Okay, if I do a directory listing, I'm going to go back to my G drive here. If I do a directory listing, okay, notice that my dates are displayed with 4 digits automatically. Okay, but before the year 2000, I'm sure some of you used a computer before the year 2000, and when 1999 came around and everyone thought all our computers were going to blow up on the year 2000, mainly it was because most programs were written to reference a date in a 2-digit year format. So programs now wouldn't see 1999, they would see the year 0, okay, which is why a lot of, 2000 updates had to occur on computers. Well, one of the updates that occurred to the directory listing on Windows machines was that it automatically displays with 4-digit year. There's the /4 parameter does absolutely nothing, okay? So there are also some new parameters available on some of the I can't see where I'm typing.